So, all right, today's idea.
Yes.
So, people are all the time getting medical diagnoses and treatment plans for like a huge range of conditions. There's millions and millions of these every year. And often these treatment plans are sort of presented as a kind of fait accompli. Look, this is what you have to do, and they're handed out by all sorts of like doctors, GPs, whatever. Because I've had various conditions before, you quickly realise that often there's various potential courses of action for any kind of condition. And it's not always really, really clear which course of action that you should take. I think there's a huge opportunity for a research business that helps people gather information to make medical decisions. So let me give you an example of one that I'm working on at the moment. I've got like this fairly mild like rheumatological condition, and the specialist is like, "Cool, I think you should take this drug. The drug's called Cellcept." He's like, "Look, you've got this inflammation. It's mild, but I think you should take this drug because if you don't take it, you could have these issues down the road that could be quite serious." So I'm like, "Okay, fine." And the guy is probably the best. Like, I found the best person for this condition in this country. So he absolutely knows what he's talking about. I don't sort of doubt that. But in my case, there are a few scenarios like this drug is pretty hardcore. Like, it is, it's used in like organ rejection, like anti-organ rejection. It's used in like other pretty hardcore autoimmune conditions. And my symptoms are really mild, and no one knows, including him, and he'll admit that, what the course of the disease is going to be. We simply just don't know. So you're basically saying, look, I'll take this drug to stop it, but we don't really know like what's going to happen anyway. And he can't price it up because there's not enough data. It's a fairly rare condition. I haven't seen it enough. So whilst I do agree that he's right, because I'm not one of those people that sort of is massively skeptical of doctors. He was chosen because he knows his stuff. He sees this all day, every day. So he's got a lot of context. But the reality is the data sets are too big for one person to kind of understand. So the question is, do you take the drug or not? No one can answer that question. No one in the world can give you that answer. The science isn't sophisticated enough to really know. But what I would like to know is, okay, cool. Like, what are the actual side effects of this drug? Yeah, obviously you can just read the label where it says, oh, you can get lymphoma and you can get, your head fucking explodes in the middle of the night. There are all these sort of side effects, and it gives like, incidence rates. But I'm like, okay, cool. Like, who's actually like gone and got that data? Like, can somebody please just find a paper for me that has looked at actual incidence of this? Because the drug's only been around for like 30 years. So has anyone really properly looked at this? Probably, but I need someone to go and find those papers. And then it's like, has anyone actually done any research into like this condition and like any longitudinal studies on efficacy for this condition? Probably there are some. I'm not going to go hacking around looking for them. So really, and there's not enough data probably to be sure. So really we're going on his clinical observations, which are hugely valuable, but they shouldn't be the only source of information that you use to make this decision. Because ultimately, if you start this drug, you don't know the consequences. I don't understand the underlying biology, so I don't really get the risks. And no one really knows what's going to happen like 40 years down the line. So I'm like, cool, I probably should take it. But like before I do really want to understand what the actual risks are. of this, like properly understand these risks, probably understand like efficacy in any studies that it's had. Now, how am I going to find that information out? He probably isn't reading every paper now. He hasn't got time. I am not going to find all the papers because I don't know my way around the space. And B, like, they're fucking complicated. You start reading them and they do get into like standard deviations and bollocks I don't really get. I just need someone to go, okay, cool, like, we're just going to go and like find all these papers and just pull together all this information for you. They're not going to make a recommendation. I think that's not necessary. I just want to know like actual risk, actual efficacy, any like problems that the drug has had in any other conditions, just something like that. Someone to go and like someone that knows what they're doing to go and spend like a day just hacking through all these papers, pulling it out, sending me a 5-page report, and then that just kind of feeding into my decision making. And I would spend, what would I spend on that? Not tons. Oh, £500 probably to save me doing this, because for me to do it, it's going to take me ages.
So
Lindsay's looking like, what are you talking about?
How do you propose the mechanic or the vehicle to do that?
Lindsay's just said we've discussed this. It's for me pod. I don't want. I'm not saying that I'm going to do it. She's not happy with this. She thinks I might not take the drug, which she thinks is insane.
So how? All right, I totally get the premise, but is the idea that it's needed, or the idea that you've got an idea of how to solve it?
The idea is that the business is cool. It's research. It's people that go and research these diagnoses for you and just give you all of the available information in a nice digestible format.
Why couldn't you? I mean, yeah, to start with, and then you need some way of querying the data that you've got. And then again, back to a chat GPT type thing, you could go and query a data set very effectively like that. But it's about questioning, because your responses are only as good as your question.
The answers that, so in my case and in a lot of cases, the answers that you want, no one will know. Like the answer, should I take this drug, is unknowable.
But do you think a day or two is enough to go and do that? I mean, we're talking like medical research papers are hundreds of pages long, complex.
Well, it depends what you... Yeah, I think there'll be levels of report, right? So, for me, I would probably, in this case, I'm pretty sure that I should take the drug, right? But I do want to know, cool, like what studies have there been on risks? So risks, and what studies have we got on efficacy? And then that stuff is going to be reasonably available if you know how to if you know where to look for it. But it's just a case of I haven't really got time, because finding and reading a medical paper takes quite a lot of time. Even if you just go to the results section, it's often not. There's often nuance to it that you miss, but that someone that's used to reading those papers, like a PhD, someone's got a PhD or something, could probably pull out the key points for you pretty quickly, far quicker than you could do. So, I don't think they just need to find the right papers, and they don't even need to say, look, we've studied the whole world. They just need to say, look, there's these kind of 5 prominent papers on it. This is what they say about risk. And often there'll be papers that exist that are just like amalgamations of other papers. So they won't do their own research, but they'll just summarize all of the research that exists. So that they'll know ways of getting that information fairly quickly. And like I said, we're not looking for a medical, look, do it, don't do it. We're just looking for cool, this is just a picture of the landscape for this drug and its risks.
And I think that's where I would steer it. You've got to use some form of technology to summarize this stuff. There's summary technology out there already, even before the AI stuff that's just come out. So if you can find a way to plumb in, PDF or OCR medical papers that you could get summarized, and you bring those together and then pull together insights out of those summaries, I think it's the only way you could do it quickly.
You think the whole thing could be automated ultimately, probably?
Yeah, for sure. Listen, we're straight down the AI train today, aren't we? Who'd have thunk it? We're normally talking about ghost stories around East London. So this is cool.
I normally hit you with some really shit manual businesses.
Yeah.
But I think AI is Interesting.
But it's quite an interesting thing because there's so many. I mean, did you know that there was 1,000 new AI apps that came out in the App Store in a week? 1,000. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just so hard to know how it's going to play out.
I mean, we don't know. We're at the dawn of a new time. 100%. I mean, I was last week. Even I was like, crikey, I've been so busy doing what I have to do. I'm so out of touch. So this is nice to have these conversations because I like to think about not about the underlying tech because I'm never going to be able to get there. That's not my world. I'm not mathematical enough. I understand computing, but I don't get it enough. So what I care about is application, and I care about product. I care about what businesses can be built using that technology to facilitate something. That's why this conversation stuff's interesting. I mean, for me, as soon as you started talking, I'd be like, right, I'd bring that into some form of data lake or something, get that process summarized by some form of AI, and then take that summary and those learnings and then put a human to read those and then do that. Because that's the intricacies. You might be able to get a chat GPT AI thing to do it, but that's how I would do it. I'd process the hell out of that massive long form data. Right, that is...
I did.
Yeah. Interesting.
I did a LinkedIn post yesterday about the impact that it's going to have on like SEO and content. And basically most content now is pretty shit. Like there's just a ton of like crap content agencies that just churn out like really average sort of stuff just to kind of get rankings. And like a load of that content now AI can get pretty close. Like, it can do some of it. It can do the bottom 10, 15%. It can probably do the next 30, 40% with some fairly basic prompts it can do. And then there's half. It gets harder and harder and harder the higher you go. But what I'm thinking about is it's just going to mean that you're going to have to create better content. So I gave this example of if you Google, back to the basics, but if you Google like best London walks into the search engines, you look at what's ranking, it is AI could probably write it now. Like it's really shit. So what's the answer? The answer is definitely not. Because what a lot of people are doing is they're like, oh, cool. Like, how can I use AI to like create content and rank? Which is definitely not the way to look at it. The way to look at it is because if everyone can do that, that just becomes the baseline. The answer is what can AI not do now or like in the foreseeable future? So like with the London Walks one, for example, unfortunately, to like create a good article, you're going to have to like go on that walk and take some pictures and speak to some people and have a coffee in a coffee shop and determine if it's any good and give people really rich, high quality, experiential content to rank. You're not just going to be able to go,
no, just good.
Okay, cool. Like, you walk up Regent's Canal and there's some swans. It's just not going to work.
Turn them into beef burgers.
So yeah, I think for me, I'm always like, all right, like what can AI for now for foreseeable future? Like, what can it kind of not do? And I think there's also opportunity there, not just in. Essentially, it's just going to blitzkrieg a load of businesses. And then it's like, okay, what then becomes the opportunity? And also, what businesses can AI just not do? So, like, I took my daughter to a swimming lesson last night. Like, a long way until you've got an AI swimming teacher. They're in the water, they're like interacting with a child. I don't think I want to live in a world where there's AI swimming teachers. Imagine that, a fucking robot in the water.
Who would you have as your AI? Because you can have anyone as your AI, right? How would you have as your AI swimming teacher?
Blomley.
Yeah, I think I would.
I'd have your business partner Ben because he'd have researched every angle about how you get children to swim.
I want David Hasselhoff. That's what I want. Yeah.
There you go.
David Hasselhoff.
How long
and Yasmin
until we have AI? How long until you have an AI swimming teacher?
I mean, you'll get holograms. Holograms will be the next thing. So that's all powered synthetic voice, synthetic imagery. It's about projection, how it's seen. That's the challenge. Because at the moment you have to have a device to see stuff like that. Holograms.
You don't think there's a robot in the water?
I mean, yeah, there will be a time, won't there? There will. Yeah.
And as a final point, because everyone talks about AI taking jobs, which obviously it will, but what people just forget the whole world of jobs that are going to be created.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's all going to be around. I think it's going to be around data and then technology for facilitation delivery. Because your data sets need to get better, how you train it needs to get better. So that will constantly evolve because life moves on and it constantly needs to learn. We need to make sure.
When AI becomes sentient, you're going to need psychotherapists for the AI when they realise they've just built. Do you reckon
it's going to be like, oh God, I've got another AI coming in. It's totally screwed up. He's dreaming about the .com crash.
Yeah, or like the AI you've created to do like kids swimming lessons, and literally that's all he does all day.
And literally all he wanted to do was do rugby. He's like, why couldn't I have been a rugby AI? I'd be swimming AI. I hate it.
Hates children. He's like, I hate them. Why are you making me do this? And then there'll be like all the lobby for like the rights of AI, which will.
I wonder if there will be rights for AI. Yeah, I think psychotherapists for AI is a great business model.
It reminds me of that Black Mirror episode where they create the other version of the person. And
that, Doug, should be a cut in itself. That should be a short for 30 seconds. Therapist for AI, 100%. That was funny.